The latest college football playoff rankings and projected bracket are officially here as we enter the final weekend of the 2024 regular season of the college football season. Guys, I am Chris Phillips. He is Dave Shumate. He is Cole Thompson. We are here reacting to, breaking down, and having some unfiltered banter regarding the committee's decision for the 12-team college football playoff as well as the latest rankings. Again, guys, appreciate you all tuning in. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Check us out via podcast, wherever you get your podcast. You can also find us across all social media platforms, as well as our website, secunfiltered.com. This segment brought to you by our friends over at Prize Picks, the official sponsors of the SEC Unfiltered Tour that will take us for our final stop of the 2024 season, which feels crazy to say, week number 14, to College Station, Texas, to watch Texas A&M and Texas do battle at Kyle Field. Certainly a game that will have major implications on not just the college football playoff, but the SEC championship race as well. Again, in the meantime, make sure you go to prizepicks.com, use promo code SECU at sign up to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 or more lineup. And again, let me remind you, it's not just college football. We are in the midst of feast week. We've got NFL. We've got NHL, everything you can think of, NBA. You can mix and match your lineup with our friends at Prize Picks. So again, prizepicks.com, promo code SECU to get that $50 bonus when you play your first $5 or more lineup. Win or lose, you're going to get that $50 bonus using promo code SECU. Again, guys, the latest college football playoff rankings and projected bracket are out. We are here reacting to, breaking down, and again, having unfiltered banter regarding the latest when it comes to the rankings. I am Chris Phillips. He's Dave Shumate. He is Cole Thompson. Gentlemen, and we'll start with Dave because we've got to let Kohler Bear let off some steam here in a few minutes. But Dave, I'll start with you. How you feeling, my friend? Good to see you. Excited to break down these rankings with you.
I honestly didn't hate them. I mean, they came out and said it was going to be eye test, which, I mean, I think there can be some opinions there about, hey, is it Notre Dame or Penn State? Who's passing the eye test? Again, I've been open. I feel like all three of us have been open about it. I'm not very high on Notre Dame and Penn State. So from an eye test perspective, I don't think they passed the sniff test, but I get why they ranked them 4 and 5 from like to CYA, cover their own ass standpoint. I mean, I get it. But I think if we're going to go full-fledged eye test, they would have to be a little higher. I'm fine with Indiana. Higher, I'm talking about further back in the CFP poll. Indiana, about 10. That was fine, about to be expected. Bama at 13. Ole Miss at 14. South Carolina 15. So between those three teams, they're factoring in head-to-head, I'm assuming. I mean, I'm guessing right now because I think South Carolina looks at least better than Alabama right now. I mean, if we just went off last week, I think Ole Miss played better overall than Alabama did. I thought Alabama looked the worst out of those three teams last week. So, I mean, I'm not upset. I mean, if you're going to go off eye test, it's going to change weekly. It just is. Alabama, Texas A&M, and Ole Miss all had to drop. I mean, it's going to change drastically if we're going off eye test. Ward Manuel said eye test. We'll see. I mean, if you want to go eye test, that's fine. I feel like I'm one of the few out there that doesn't mind that. If you want, again, it's very subjective. But I don't mind eye test. If we just want to go off a rankings, data, formula standpoint, let's just go back to the BCS system and just don't have a committee and let them just spit out the 1 through 12 for us. And we just have to accept if it's a committee, there's going to be some subjectiveness to it.
Hey, Cole, what's up?
What do you want me to say? What would you like me to say at this point? Because I am beyond frustrated. I am beyond annoyed and sick and disgusted because of, in one hand, we can say that head-to-heads matter. And in the other hand, we could say only when the logo is attached to the name. Because that is exactly what we have seen this year multiple times, and it is beyond infuriating. All I want in this sport, all we deserve in this sport, all we as fans need in this sport is clarity on parity. Give us a criteria. Let the criteria be the main point on deciding the order, and then let battle commence. Because, my God, how on one week you can say head-to-heads are truly a factor, and then the next go, Not that pretty of a logo. We're going to put them down a spot. It doesn't make sense. It is infuriating. It is beyond frustrating. And more importantly, it's a joke that this is what we have to deal with every single week. The committee has no idea what it's doing. As clear as evidence is once again tonight, the committee once again does not understand what is the actual formula that needs to work together because of, on one breath, this is what matters in week 3. And on the other breath, this is what matters in week 4. And on the third breath, this is what matters in week 5 going into the actual 12-team playoff. Just give me clarity, give us clarity for all of us to be able to sit down and say, yep, that is the exact formula that you need to guarantee your spot into the college football playoff. Either head-to-heads, resume, strength of schedule, strength of conference, strength of record, or eye test. But you can't tell us one week strength of schedule and head-to-heads matter, and then the next week say, actually, the eye test matters, and so does the strength of record. Just give us a freaking answer that is actually a balanced, cohesive formula. That's all I ask for moving forward. It's not that hard. It really is. And by the way, congratulations, because Mac Brown, the one dude who actually knows college football pretty freaking well because he's won a national championship, just got fired today. I think I know what his next job should be.
Guys, drop your bear emojis in the comments if you want to hear Cole go off tonight, because it's going to happen. And I would, we're gonna continue to expand on this. I'm gonna pull up the rankings here. We're gonna pull up the graphic, and then we can let all hell break loose. I would agree with you, Cole. The frustrating part of all this is the consistency or lack thereof. But as Dave was just mentioning, I'm almost starting to feel like the only way to get back to, hey, you know what? You may hate it, you may not like it, but the most consistent way is letting computers decide.
Yeah.
Because if you leave it to humans, it's subjective. And it's going to change every week. And as humans, we have such recency bias. And to your point, it's like one week we're like, well, I don't know, man. I mean, eye test is really important to me this week. And the next you're like, well, that head-to-head thing's important too. So it's just, it's a moving target. And obviously this committee is seemingly missing the mark every week. So I don't necessarily want to determine the top 12 teams based off what computers say, but that would be the most consistent option because at least there'd be a formula. And it's crazy that I'm saying this because, like, I don't want to go back to the BCS, but that would be that would spit out the most consistent thing.
I'm all right with the BCS formula.
It's not two teams.
Yeah.
It's not two teams. All right, let's get in these rankings again. We could go all day. I want to make sure everybody, you've seen them to this point, but let's pull them up. We're going to debate these here. So again, starting at 25, Colorado, 24, Kansas State, 23, Illinois, 22, UNLV, 21, Mizzou, who apparently Eli Drinkwitz doesn't know Taylon Green's name. That should play well this weekend.
I'm excited. I'm very excited.
What did you say the high was, Dave? 28?
I think the high now has been up to 32, low 15, chance of snow, chance of precipitation, 70%.
Dave is not saying the most important thing. The best part about SEC football is Midwest weather. And I can tell you what, we are going to watch as the Midwest team actually gives the SEC dominance on Saturday. Talon Green is going down.
Missouri Gold, Missouri fans.
Talon Green is going down this weekend.
Talon, M-I-Z. And no, I don't hate you, Missouri fans, or have a bias against you. I promise. Number 20, Texas A&M. Guys, the Aggies tumble. I mean, we got no issues here, right? I mean, A&M falling to Auburn over the weekend feels like this was pretty expected.
Yeah, and hey, that 20th team still controls its own destiny to the playoffs.
Yep,
Ole Miss and Alabama would love to have that opportunity. I mean, it's going to be a tough road. I mean, it's going to be like crossing the old Oregon Trail. Everybody used to play that video game.
As a 4-loss SEC loser, SEC championship game loser, is not going to get. So A&M, your only path, beat Texas, beat Georgia.
Can we also say the quiet part out loud that kind of you don't want Texas A&M to go? Because here's the thing. Texas A&M will without doubt be the last squad in because of the way the rankings currently are, which means every team in the SEC is going to play. No one's going to get a first round bye. Like, just remember that real fast, guys. The way it looks right now is that Texas A&M, Tennessee, Texas, and probably Georgia all would get in, and every single one of them would play in that first round. Meanwhile, Arizona State, Boise State would get a bye.
I mean, the way the rules are set this year, let's be honest, what gripe would we really have as a conference? So think about it. If Texas A&M beat Georgia, obviously they shouldn't get a bye. I mean, Tennessee. Well,
Dave, I want to get there in a moment. I as each week passes, I just feel like you're rewarded for playing an easy schedule.
You're really going to tell me that we're going to put an Arizona State squad in because they played an easier schedule when it comes to strength of record?
Strength of schedule means nothing.
Nothing.
It means
no,
nothing.
it's an eye test. I mean,
there is no point. I mean, I even saw, and we're going to get there in a second, by the way, because they are ranked at number 12. But I'm going to wait till we get to 12. 19 BYU, 18 Iowa State, 17 Tulane, 16 Arizona State, who you're going to see in the bracket in a moment. Guys, this is where it gets really interesting from the SEC perspective. South Carolina at 15, Ole Miss at 14. You can't see them right now, but Alabama is at 13. I'll go through the rest. Clemson at 12, Boise State 11, Indiana 10, SMU 9, Tennessee 8, Georgia 7, Miami 6, Notre Dame 5, Penn State 4, Texas 3, Ohio State 2, and Oregon is at 1. Guys, I want to go to Clemson because we were just talking about strength of schedule. I saw something right before we hopped on. I don't know the show or anything, and this is no shade at the guy. But he's essentially – maybe it was actually Pete Thamel, and I'm not throwing shade at Pete Thamel.
So you don't know the show, but you know who Pete is, the clerk.
Well, yeah, it was a TikTok clip, and I'm pretty sure. Anyways, the argument was, well, I mean, if Clemson would have played Furman week 1 instead of Georgia and they would have got that win. I'm like, why do we want to reward a team for playing nobody? Why is that better to just play nobody? Why?
Yeah, everybody's a little mixed in this CP where it's like I think people are like, all right, whatever, we're going to take our ball and go home and schedule nobody.
We're going to completely get rid of any valuable non-conference games.
Well, I mean,
why would you play them?
Yeah.
If you're in the SEC, why would you play anybody worth a damn out of conference? Why? I mean, you're going to get punished if you lose.
They're already getting punished.
I know that. That's what I'm saying.
They're already getting punished. So, I mean, congratulations. Like, that's the point. You have to make it matter. You do. You have to make it matter. And I'm not saying that Clemson doesn't belong in here. If Clemson does beat South Carolina, there is a sheer clear-cut case sitting at 10-2. They belong in. But I am saying, look at Indiana for an instance. Would anybody, let me ask you both just out of curiosity. There was a conversation that was had that there was a moment where Indiana could have gone in a non-conference matchup against Louisville. So they would have played an ACC squad rather than, I believe it was Illinois State or Illinois Tech. If I'm not mistaken, I'm blanking on who that is on the top of my head. But like, if you tell me that that's the schedule, does anybody really have a problem if they go 11-1 because of now it's their out of conference schedule with an ACC team?
If they played Louisville,
if they played Louisville over, I'm blanking.
Yeah, they won that game and they were 11-1. Yeah, it would definitely help. I mean, dude, I don't have a problem with the way stuff's shaking out right now to give them a chance this year. I really don't. Maybe I'm in a minority of that. I mean, I guess I'm not the minority. The committee has it, but like, I don't know. I think I can't say it. I mean, I think Ole Miss and even South Carolina are playing well enough right now where, yes, they could go compete in this college football playoff and do some damage. But again, I mean, at some point, I can't put a 3-loss team in against a 1-loss team, even if I don't know. I just can't do that. I think Indiana, I think that's before that punt return, I think that game was going to be close. And again, it ended up being a double-digit game. I'm just not opposed to putting Indiana in. All the years, I'm not opposed to it.
I'm not opposed of leaving Indiana out. I never have been. In fact, I've been the biggest proponent of it. What I'm just saying is that if you switch out their first matchup and they end up playing Louisville instead, and they win that game, even if it's by a field goal, nobody is talking about Indiana having the quote-unquote weak schedule. The problem is that, number one, you can't control what happens in the Big Ten with every other team. It's not your fault that Michigan didn't hold up its end of the bargain. Washington, the runner-up of the national championship, didn't hold up its end of the bargain. That Nebraska didn't show up on the day that you played them. That Michigan State didn't show up on the day that you played them. It's not your fault, but at the same time, people are going to judge it. I want Indiana in the playoff because if they are going to go 11-1, and they've proven at this point that if we're going to give credit to teams in the SEC, we got to give credit to teams in the Big Ten. But with that being said, let's also not act like the teams that have 3 losses currently in the SEC haven't had a more daunting task, and they're being penalized because some of them have scheduled out of conference games. Perfect example, a Texas A&M.
So I'm asking you, do y'all think all 3 of those SEC teams, the 3 loss, Bama, Ole Miss, South Carolina, should be in above Indiana?
Do I, as of right now, the way they've played, yes. But
I can respect
even Alabama after they played last week.
If you want my honest answer, I would leave Alabama out regardless.
Would you pick those 3 SEC teams against Indiana?
The spread would say so, and I would agree.
The spread would say so, but y'all 100%
would
certain
you pick them?
They would all three. I think Ole Miss would beat Indiana because I think Ole Miss's interior defensive line. It's all about matchups. I think Indiana could beat Alabama.
Indiana could 100%.
I think Indiana could beat South Carolina. I don't know if they could beat Ole Miss. From an interior defense, I don't know. And maybe South Carolina. I feel like Indiana's best chance to beat of those three teams would be Alabama.
It's Bama. It's 100% Bama, and Bama's the one that is. And to me, again, because of the way that we look at strength of schedule and then head-to-heads, and 1 week strength of schedule matters, and 1 week resume matters, and 1 week eye test matters, and 1 week head-to-heads matter. Yeah, but they said that last week too, and congratulations, eye test isn't telling us crap because of if we're saying,
who are you upset about? I'm asking you, the top 12. Who are you upset about?
Am I upset about anybody in the top 12? It's not about the top 12. It's about the pathway to the playoff for South Carolina is what I'm upset about.
Yeah, I feel like with these rankings, I feel like South Carolina's screwed, man. I do. If you're still behind Ole Miss and Alabama, like to me, it's just showing they and I guess, Cole, this is where I really see your argument and your frustration because they're putting a lot of value in head-to-head here. I mean –
but they didn't but that was the problem is that they didn't have head-to-head battles earlier in the year. But now because of the pretty logo isn't there, now head-to-head battles matter. That's all I'm saying. Make it consistent. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're good. That being said, let's pull up the bracket and continue the conversation. Here's what the bracket would look like. Again, like I said, sticking with South Carolina. They got the big one against Clemson this weekend. Clemson's the first team out. They did make a good point. If Clemson beats South Carolina, they've got a pretty quality win. I think Clemson will probably slide in. I mean, they may need some help ahead of them. I think Clemson slides in if they beat South Carolina.
I mean, that's Alabama. That's Alabama. Obviously, South Carolina's worst nightmare because they're losing the game. But for Ole Miss and Alabama, too, that's their worst night. That almost has to happen for Alabama or Ole Miss to have a shot.
I mean,
it's almost a non-negotiable.
And this reaffirms, too, we even said after Oklahoma, and it sounds so crazy, but Alabama could still back their way in.
Yeah.
I mean, and I mean, to the point, Cole, and you make a great point. It's let's just be realistic. And they showed the graphic on the thing tonight. They showed the graphic on the show. 3-loss SEC team or 3-loss team resumes. And I saw that Bama logo up there, and I saw that South Carolina logo, and I'm like, there is just no way. There's just no way. There's no way.
I don't think they have a path unless they could just go absolutely destroy Clemson, which – shoot,
South Carolina is pulling hard for Auburn this weekend.
Yeah,
hard.
Auburn, Vandy,
maybe even Jeff Levy and the boys to do something weird. Like, I mean, and that's unfortunate because South Carolina is hotter than any team in the country. They've winners of 5 in a row. Like, but to me, the committee is showing that head-to-head. I mean, it is.
I mean, let's call a spade a spade. I think if it was like a Tennessee, Georgia, Alabama thing where it was like, all right, well, they beat them. It was all 1-1 between the 3-way tie.
I
think it has to matter when it's a 3-way tie. We're sitting here and one team is 0-2 against the others.
I mean, listen, Gamecock fans will lose it, but if roles are reversed, you'd want that head. You'd be like, we literally on the field of play beat that team. I understand. I would just evaluating tonight from the South Carolina perspective. It feels like to me, you are screwed unless some craziness happens ahead of you. And it could. We sat here a week ago and said, hey, a lot can happen. And sure enough, shit hit the fan and a lot did happen. So you got to keep your fingers crossed, but or you got to hope some chaos happens and you got to go out and pound Clemson. I mean, you know what I mean? You got to leave no doubt. You need to go win by like 3 touchdowns, dominate at their place. And at that point, you'll have done all you can do, obviously. And again, you probably need to hope some teams ahead of you lose. But I go back to this too, again, as we look at the bracket here. The thing I don't like hearing them talk about during the show is like, well, we're going to group all the 1-loss teams together and all the 2-loss teams together. And we're just going, I'm like, is that really how a ranking works? I mean, I understand valuing wins and losses, but it's just, these schedules are not built the same. They're not.
No.
They're not built the same. Why are we acting like all the schedules are built the same?
I mean,
that to me is like what's BS.
If we're talking about Indiana, I'll at least say they have like looked apart eye test wise from dominance against other teams outside of Ohio.
Listen, you can only play who you play. They also, did y'all hear them say tonight? They're like, listen, I didn't watch every snap of that game. Weren't they down like 31-7? Was that game close?
No, it wasn't.
Am I missing that? They were like, that was it was what's his name? Freaking
Joey Galloway.
The head guy, the commissioner guy.
Ward Manuel.
So they asked him. Listening to him talk is just wild.
Well,
he's a blabbering buffoon at times. He don't know what the hell's going on. You ask him about a straight answer. Well, what do you think about a college a conference championship loser? And he's like, we put a lot of stock in going to the conference title. That's something we hold in high regard. But we also look at how you play. It's like, well, which one is it, bro? Like, should you want to go or should you not? Because you're talking out of both sides of your mouth right now. And that's
everything that's being said is being talked out of at both sides of the mouth right now.
I was going to say that's what pisses Cole off, pisses all off. It's contradictory at every turn.
Guys, it's every single week when the pretty logos get involved with it, and I can prove it with one sentence. This is where I want to go ahead and start. So both of you, I need you to calm down and let me just vent. Let me vent with the audience and let them have their moment. In the week that Texas A&M lost to South Carolina, in that week alone, LSU was ranked number 22, despite having a 3-point victory over South Carolina, who was ranked number 21. South Carolina lost to Alabama. Alabama lost to Tennessee. Tennessee last week was ranked behind Alabama. Georgia lost to Ole Miss with 2 losses. Guess what the rankings were? They were right next to each other. And now because we say, well, head-to-heads matter in some format and head-to-heads matter in a different format, depending on who the logo is, now we're going to allow them to have an actual value. 2 weeks ago, South Carolina was ranked low. Tennessee was ranked behind Alabama despite having the head-to-head. On one hand, for Texas, Arkansas is a good win. On the other hand, for Tennessee, Arkansas is a bad loss. In the games that that Alabama has lost this year, in matchups against Vanderbilt and against Oklahoma, in 2 of the most egregious games I have seen this year by the performance of Alabama, South Carolina has outscored them combined by 47 points. They lost to Alabama by a 2-point conversion and nearly had an opportunity on a heave pass downfield. There has been one game where South Carolina has been actually down and out of the count, and it was the Ole Miss game. So if we're going to say that eye test matters, and Greg McElroy is the person that said it, and it drove me nuts, the way that you're playing right now. So the way that you're playing right now is saying that Alabama, which did not score a touchdown, regardless of if that illegal formation, which, by the way, SEC officiating, Greg Sankey, please, for the love of God, have an actual meeting this offseason about getting them on the full-time payroll, because if it is a joke that play actually happened. But if you can't score a touchdown and you lose by 26 points to South Carolina, and then you lose 21 points and you end up beating Alabama, that has to matter. Make it make sense. Make it make sense where you have one team lose by 2 points and then lose by 3 points, and the head-to-heads are completely different, but then Tennessee beats Alabama, and Tennessee is ranked behind Alabama. Ole Miss beats Georgia, and yet in the AP poll, Georgia is ranked ahead of Ole Miss. There's no clarity. There's no parity.
Are you combining the AP? Are you combining the AP and the CFP? We're talking.
No, I'm saying the CFP. What I'm saying is that a week ago, we were having conversations. Well, Georgia is a more complete team than Ole Miss. Ole Miss beat the brakes off of them. Yeah. There is no conversation. None. Whatever. And then Tennessee comes back and they beat Alabama, and they both have 2 losses. But the 2 losses don't matter anymore because of when it comes to neutral opponent. Alabama has the head-to-head win over Georgia. But Georgia still beat them, and you still beat Tennessee. Make it make sense. There is no clarity. There is none.
I think to be fair to the committee here, they can't figure out the SEC. I think that's fair. And I think, and let's be honest, too, none of us have it figured out. I'm trying to play devil's advocate, not just get mad.
And that's why
I have figured out the SEC. It's better than most other conferences, which is why you should still have more representation with 3 lost teams at this point. Sorry. That's what I figured out.
I'm saying, Cole, when they're talking about the 3 lost teams, is what.
So we're really going to sit here and say that Miami, that has played literally the 59th ranked schedule. But I'm just saying that doesn't matter. That doesn't play a factor.
I'm just saying between the 3 lost teams is what the main conversation. I mean, do you have a problem with the top 12?
No,
well,
because
I still go back to what I said last week that we're spending so much time talking about Penn State, Notre Dame, and Miami that just.
I mean, dude, eye test. I don't think Penn State, Notre Dame sniff eye test. But are we shocked that they're ranked that high?
Did we also hear them say eye test matters? And if eye test matters, isn't South Carolina playing better?
What would you rank? Did you have Penn State, Notre Dame in your top 12 if eye test matters?
Notre Dame, I would. Penn State, I wouldn't.
I think
Notre Dame, I would. Penn State, I wouldn't.
So what is your rankings off? I mean, we're going off eye test.
I would still have probably Ole Miss in. I put South Carolina in. And I would probably take out right now Miami, and I would probably take out. I probably would take out Penn State. That would be what I would do. I'm not putting Alabama in. I'm sorry. As an Alabama grad, I understand that I'm going to get a lot of backlash for this. You can't lose to Vanderbilt, and you can't lose to Oklahoma, and you cannot lose to Oklahoma where you don't score a touchdown and think that you're in the college football playoff. You can't. I'm sorry. There's no debate. Mizzou's offense got more success than you had. South Carolina's offense had more success than you had. Ole Miss's offense had more success than you had. I'm sorry. I can't. I can't put Alabama in when you score 3 points. And even still, if you get that touchdown, you'll lose by 17. I can't do it.
I mean, I don't have a problem with somebody leaving out Alabama, but I think out of those 3 teams, I think Ole Miss has the highest ceiling out of those 3 teams, and it's probably the 3 best teams.
Alabama's getting the benefit of the doubt because they're Alabama.
Because of the script day carries weight.
I mean, of course it does.
I think also, let's be fair too. They have really good wins. They have some
they beat Georgia. They beat Georgia.
South Carolina, Missouri. It's 3 top 25 CFP teams. They have more than anybody in the league.
But Dave, think about this for a minute. Let's flip the switch and say if you're
I'm not arguing Alabama, so there's no need to argue. I would say Alabama would sit about 2 or 3 for me. I think Ole Miss is the team that should get in if you're really talking those 3 teams.
Sure, and I can make the argument for Ole Miss because of Ole Miss. The Florida team that they've played is different than the Florida team that played against Texas A&M in Week 3. And we have to carry that. Yeah, and Texas. Again, the Texas game for Texas, we don't know what that score would have been because of how many players were out. We just don't. But at the same time, when you look at Ole Miss and you look at South Carolina, if you want to respect head-to-heads in that standpoint, I can get behind that because one boat raced the other.
The way they won is the reason I'd have to respect that head-to-head. That's the biggest thing.
But at the same time, when you tell me that in those matchups, in the medium games, in the games that you can say are comparable, Vanderbilt got boat raced by South Carolina. Oklahoma got boat raced by South Carolina. Both those teams beat Alabama. But Alabama is going to get the benefit of the doubt because of the ranked wins. As much as wins matter, I believe so do losses and so do eye tests. And the eye test is telling me right now, Ole Miss is playing more consistent than Alabama.
But Ole Miss probably is the worst loss, wouldn't you say? Out of all 3.
The Kentucky loss, yeah.
Kentucky hadn't won a conference game since.
The Kentucky loss is the worst one. Yeah. What I also will say is that Kentucky at times did show up. And I know that, it's a loss is a loss, so it's not really that big of a deal. But they showed up against Georgia. They showed up against Texas in the 3rd quarter. Where have you seen Oklahoma show up in any game besides the Auburn one? I mean, that's it.
And they needed a Peyton Thorne vomiting on himself.
I'm with you, Cole. I mean, I know Oklahoma's a 6-6 team, potentially 7 if they beat LSU. But I'm like, if that – even then, I'm having a hard time even getting this out of my mouth. But even a close loss, you're sitting there like, maybe it's better. But, yeah, I mean, in the second half, it was just a total ass-kicking. I mean, it's to a very average Oklahoma team. I'm with you. I mean, if somebody wants to leave out Alabama, you're not going to have any argument from me. This late in the year, a loss like that to a very average Oklahoma team. You had people petitioning going to the game.
The entire premise that I'm building this off of is LSU was ranked behind South Carolina when both had 3 losses. But South Carolina had the same amount of wins as LSU, but LSU beat them head-to-head. Tennessee and Alabama were ranked in different spots despite having head-to-heads. So head-to-heads matter in matchups when we're talking about the pretty logos and the teams that we know will bring in ratings. As I've mentioned all offseason, it's easier to sell a ACC winner in SMU and a Miami at large bid than is the flip side around because of the logos. Now it matters. Now logos matter. The logo matters that Ole Miss, who has Lane Kiffin as its head coach, that has a very dominant $10 million portal-led team over South Carolina, and Alabama, that script day, is over South Carolina. But it didn't matter when Tennessee and Alabama had head-to-heads in the same record. It didn't matter when LSU and South Carolina had the same head-to-head record. That's where I have the issue. I want clarity. Clarity has to matter at some point, especially when strength of schedule, strength of conference, head-to-head matchups, and resumes all play a factor. It has to matter. And it doesn't when it is the teams that you know won't draw in the same number of television ratings as the other opponents. That's all I'm saying.
I mean, Cole, I don't think clarity matters because if it did, they would adamantly release some sort of guidelines about their process. I mean, am I wrong? I mean, is that out there? And I haven't seen it because, I mean, I don't really know the process at all. I mean, and then it brings up this thing. It's like, you know, South Carolina fans and South Carolina's going to have this gripe. How you're playing down the stretch should matter. This gets into the whole head-to-head, strength of schedule, and then 12 best versus 12 most deserving. Where does most deserving fit in? Is South Carolina one of the 12 most deserving? Is that a thing? Or do we just throw that out the window?
Yeah, I feel like most deserving is thrown around by the team's fan base that gets left out like Florida State last year.
And I mean, I don't think you can like build your entire argument off of, well, you know, we're playing the best down the stretch and, you know, we should be one of the 12. I mean, I get teams evolve and you get better. I mean, South Carolina is a perfect example of getting better from week 1 to week 14. I also think head-to-head have to matter because the games have to matter. But then back to Cole's point, I mean, we sat here literally and, you know, to your point, Cole, LSU had the head-to-head. South Carolina was one spot ahead. It's like, and I even remember Dave a few weeks ago mentioning that, and we sort of brushed it off in the moment, but you think back and it was like, that's an inconsistency with the committee. That doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, they literally played and LSU won the game and they're one spot behind South Carolina. So how do you make sense of that? But I think with the Gamecocks, it's you got to crush Clemson and just hope some dominoes fall in front of you. Cause I think otherwise the committee's making it very clear, you know, Alabama, assuming they win their rivalry games, I don't see any route to you leapfrogging them both. I don't see that.
No, I don't either.
You're not going to be that 3-loss SEC team they pick. That's what you're telling you.
Here's the crazy part though. What if just humor me? We see a ton of upsets this weekend. And Tennessee loses to Vanderbilt.
We very well could. I mean,
Cal loses Cal beats SMU. Syracuse beats Miami.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking about at this point, maybe South Carolina, Ole Miss, and Alabama, if they all win this weekend, backdoor covering their way in.
Six teams.
At this point, when you look
that would be like a Disney Channel into the movie corner.
The
committee says psych.
I'm just saying, humor me for a minute. You have to realize that we're not going to allow a 3-loss Miami team in.
No,
because Because here's the thing.
I love, not to cut you off, Cole, I loved how the panel was like, well, you know, Miami and Georgia, they're going to have that common opponent in Georgia Tech. I'm like, I don't need that common opponent to tell me Georgia's better than Miami. Are you joking? Are we really like that's going to be the feather in the cap because Georgia took down the Jackets Friday night in Athens? Come on, man.
No, I don't think that there's going to be 6 teams in. By the way, I see it. Money contrast. I don't think that there's going to be 6 teams in. What I do think, though, which is really important here, is that there's an opportunity for all the chaos to occur to where you have to realize that everything is still on the table for multiple 9-3 teams to get in. Because Alabama's not going to the SEC championship game. South Carolina and Ole Miss not going to the SEC championship game.
Just 3 teams, yeah.
But you can make the case that if somehow, some way, a Tennessee loses, an SMU loses, a Miami loses, 2 of them at least have a shot to get in. And depending on how they view that win and how big the win is, if South Carolina does get the victory, what if Alabama wins on a game-winning field goal against Auburn in its backyard? And Alabama, who again won by 2 points, but also, humor me, Alabama won by 2 points against South Carolina. What if Mississippi State loses horribly to Ole Miss and Clemson loses horribly to South Carolina? Is that enough for you to say when it comes to, as mentioned, the eye test down the stretch, Alabama winning by a field goal and the other two teams in their rivalry matches winning by double digits, is that not enough to move Alabama down the other two?
My thing with that, Cole, is like the top 25 wins, Alabama still. Head-to-head,
Sure.
Alabama still. Like, I mean, at some point, that is, and I usually hate this phrase, but it is a classic, why do we even play the games at that point? Like, if we're just, like, so we should just start the season in the month of November?
No, we shouldn't start the season in the month of November. What we should do is when there is a clarity standpoint, Tennessee versus Alabama with a head-to-head matchup. And at the time, they hadn't played Tennessee. I mean, they hadn't played Georgia yet. Tennessee and Alabama should be at the same level because of one has the head-to-head. LSU versus South Carolina should be at the same level because of the head-to-head. But it matters one week and it doesn't the next. That's all I'm trying to say.
I think all that matters is the last ranking. I mean,
yeah, as Reese Davis has pointed out multiple times. I want to say this too, just to kind of play devil's advocate and flip to the other side, because again, we've talked about head-to-head, strength of schedule, eye test, most deserving. I could argue I don't think Bama and Ole Miss deserve it, if I'm being totally honest. Because you know why? You know why they don't deserve it? Because you had it. You had it. All you had to do was beat Oklahoma and Auburn if you're Alabama, and you had to beat Florida and Mississippi State. Like, you don't deserve it if you can't finish it off. At least South Carolina, man, they were sitting at 3-3, and they've won 5. Give credit, they've won 5 in a row. They've scratched and clawed to even get in this position. So, and this is not like head-to-heads matter. But, like, I'll have no problem leaving Bama and Ole Miss out at this point. Because, like, you know what? You dropped the ball. You messed it up. You lost to way worse teams that are going to be in the top 12. So, could Alabama and Ole Miss get in and make some noise? Sure. They might also get blasted in the first round. I don't know. Because they're obviously Bama's floor is just, I mean, it is in the depths of hell. The bar is in hell for Alabama this season. And then Ole Miss even, I don't know what I'm getting with Lane Kiffin.
I guess you could argue Ole Miss's floor is worse than Alabama's. They have the worst loss.
It is worse. Well, okay.
There you go. They're both their bars are in hell.
But whose ceiling is better?
Ole Miss.
I'd still say Ole Miss's ceiling is higher.
Yeah.
I still think 100%.
I'll put it this way. I don't feel bad for Bama and Ole Miss. I don't feel bad for them. I can't because they had it in their grasp.
They've had opportunities, dude. I mean, they can't complain. I'll say out of those 3 teams, who has the biggest gripe? Probably South Carolina, because I'm with Cole. Like, the penalty at the end of the LSU game, something you'll always look back on. I mean, for sure. Right? South Carolina, especially because they ended the year so hot, they're going to have a lot more like, dang, what if, dude? What if we just didn't start 3-3? What if we didn't blow a 17-0 lead? What if the ref didn't call the rough in the passer? You're like, Alabama, Ole Miss, I'm with you, CP. This late in the year, those performances, I don't care if it's on the
They
ref.
feel unforgivable, man. They feel unforgivable.
I will be right back. Just give me 1 second. I have to step out for it.
Okay, good deal. Anyways, I would say, to your point, Dave, the Bama performance at this point in the year feels unforgivable. It does.
Yeah.
It really does. To lose the way you did.
It's a blowout.
Yeah, to lose the way you did to a bad Oklahoma team. Oklahoma is not a good football team.
Yeah. I agree with you. I think it's a very fair statement, to be honest with you. I do. It is like, if you're being objective, it is kind of like.
It's not even me like arguing from the South Carolina perspective of why they should get in. I'm just saying from the just pure standpoint of, if I'm making a 12-team playoff, if I'm making the 12-team playoff, I'm like, you're right. Bama's got some great wins. Ole Miss has got some great wins. But you know what? It was all in front of them, and they couldn't get to the finish line without tripping. So it's like, do they really deserve it? I mean,
all 3 teams have themselves to blame at the end of the day. Yeah. Nobody's really sitting there like South Carolina's going to finish hot. But, I mean, it's still like, well, if we didn't start off 3-3, no show against Ole Miss, we finished the job in Tuscaloosa. I mean, you could say what ifs. I mean,
Dave, I want to go to the – we've been talking about, obviously, 13, 14, 15, whatever, that sector of team. I want to go to the top. Texas, are they in no matter what? Could they lose to A&M and still be in? Are they – because that was the big conversation last week, right? It was, is it a playoff eliminator for both sides? And I know Texas fans don't want to think about it, but with the chaos that's occurred, I think they're in, Dave. If what this committee's telling us reigns true, if it stands true, they might be 10-2. and they might have lost to Georgia and Texas A&M, and I'm just going to say it. They may have not had an impressive win or felt like you feel like they've beaten anybody, and maybe a South Carolina has or somebody else has, but they're 10-2.
Yeah.
Are they really going to drop Texas out of the top 12? I don't know. I think they might be in
hold up.
what.
Are we not having the conversation about Texas?
Well, now we're talking about Texas. Yeah, I'll bring you in the loop, Cole. I just asked the question: is Texas in no matter what now?
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
Because
That's what I'm
you
saying.
really penalize them that much for that road game, and again, you got more coaches than you've ever had on the committee. Those people are going to
right.
I'm going to tell you the main reason. We have watched for years Greg Sankey fight to get 2 teams into the college football playoff. We've watched Greg Sankey for years say, this is the toughest conference. We deserve the most representation. He doesn't care if Texas is having a lackluster schedule or if they're brand new to the conference. He wants the most representation. Right now, you would have 2 teams in, Tennessee and Georgia. That would be it. They're the only 2 guaranteed, because you can't say that a 4-loss A&M is going to go. You can't say that you're going to put in Alabama. You can't say you're going to put in Ole Miss. You can't say you're going to put in South Carolina. But the way that they're at 9-3, he's going to fight harder than he has ever fought before for a brand new opponent that has just joined the conference to guarantee their spot, because if he wants the most representation, it's going to, they're in.
It feels like, Cole, there's like a minimum number. We've been talking about what's the max that'll get in. Doesn't feel like there's a minimum that is going to get in. Like there's not going to be 2 SEC teams in the play. That's crazy talk. Talk.
If you want to guarantee they start their own college football playoff,
oh yeah,
you put 2 SEC teams in and say, sorry, that's what the record says. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
cool.
Yeah, there's no way they put 2 in. I'd be baffled.
Yeah. Nobody had a better weekend, we could argue, guys, in Tennessee. I mean, man, if I'm Tennessee, I'm like, which Joey Galloway, funny enough, they gave him some hell at the end of the show, second straight week. He's like, I'm Tennessee, I don't want to play. It's like, we know you want to sit out. You want to bench everybody. But realistically, here we go. Another SEC team that's at the finish line. All you got to do is go beat Diego Pavia in Nashville. And I think, Dave, they could win by 3. They could win by 33. As long as they win, they're in.
Who, Tennessee?
Tennessee.
Yeah.
As long as they win, they're in.
As long as they win, they're in. I agree with you.
Don't you? Hey, I'll tell you this though. Let's talk about a little bit about these first round matchups here. Tennessee's got to be pulling for Georgia to win the SEC, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to. I'll be honest with you guys. I was there. I don't want to see Tennessee go back to Athens. I have no interest in seeing that again. I mean, I'm saying from the standpoint, I was there and it was a great atmosphere, and I don't want to see Tennessee go back to Athens, man.
Those are some underwhelming matchups.
Yeah, those first round matchups suck, to be honest.
Can I say that this is the first week where I have been very disappointed with what we would get in the first round of the match?
Yeah, I don't know how you couldn't be. It'd be a little God, Georgia, Tennessee, let's hope you have a better.
Hey, fun question for both of you guys. Early spread came out from Action Network. Georgia -7 against Tennessee. How would you feel about that?
I think that's fine. I've seen some early spreads.
But I'd hammer the Dogs.
I'm saying
a second time against. Please.
I think the only line that I wouldn't feel comfortable touching at all is probably SMU and Notre Dame. I think that one is at.
Oh, you saw these two? Okay.
Yeah, I think it's at 9.5. I think that's a little.
Notre Dame -9.5.
I think it's Notre Dame -9.5.
Yeah.
Here's what
SMU there.
Here's the one thing I will say, and can we say it finally as loud as possible? Ryan Day deserves to be fired if he does not make it to the semifinals. With that draw, there is no way that you are allowed.
They'd be a 20.5 point favorite over Arizona State.
There is no way you are not allowed to make it to the semifinals and keep your job if you're Ryan Day. There just isn't. There's none.
Yeah, and then Penn State, Indiana, the most just Big Ten game of all. I mean, Boise State sitting with the bye. I mean, I just
those really would be underwhelming.
Oh my gosh,
first round games.
I will say,
let's just keep playing this fairy tale game that the G5 should get a first round bye or even be in this freaking field.
Well,
let's just play the fairy tale game. We'll do that.
Start rooting for Tulane, because that'll guarantee it. Start rooting for Tulane. If you want
for Tulane, the team that lost to Oklahoma.
So okay, but now we're having arguments about the team that lost to Oklahoma. Worse, we're talking about that same team being being the second team out. Talking about the same team, two same teams. Like make it make sense. Like on one breath, you're sitting here and being like, oh yeah, Alabama with a loss to Vanderbilt and Tennessee and Oklahoma. You know, there's still a scenario. Meanwhile, Tulane, that is a G5 opponent, is not afraid to go into the belly of the beast of Norman and at least make it interesting for 3 quarters. Yet one is guaranteed and the other one, it's just they lost to Oklahoma. Like, it makes no sense. That's all I'm saying.
Cole, Alabama, Tulane, neutral field. Who are you taking?
I'm taking Bama, but I'm just saying.
I'm just curious. I was just curious.
In the Superdome in New Orleans.
Bama, Tulane. Yeah.
Is Summerall off to Chapel Hill yet?
Oh, the Tulane contingency would be out full force to take down the Tide.
I say, are we done with what's his name, Summerall there? Because maybe.
Hey, I'll tell you this: this feels like a pretty good path for Texas if everything stay consistent. Which, I mean, there's going to be chaos these last few weeks because Texas, even if they beat A&M, they got to go play Georgia, and I mean, you know, who knows? I guess what would happen in that, but you got to like the path here if you're Texas. If it were to play out today, I mean. Right? I mean, winner of SMU Notre Dame and either Indiana, Penn State, or Miami. I mean, could be a lot worse. I mean, Georgia and Tennessee, to me, have got a much more difficult path.
Can I ask you guys the quiet part just real fast? If let's just say everyone finishes at 11-2 or 12-1, do we have a problem with this? Because I personally don't. I think my problem is going to be when we see maybe an SMU lose this weekend or Miami lose this weekend, and then both get in because they have 2 losses over a 3-loss SEC team. I think that's where I have an issue. If everyone right now with the way it is, 2 losses for Arizona State, 1 loss for Ohio State, 2 losses for Tennessee, 2 losses, and they beat Texas in the SEC championship, so you switch that one out. 1 loss for Indiana, 1 loss for Penn State, 1 loss or 2 loss for SMU, 1 loss for Notre Dame, and everyone else. Do we have a problem with it? Because we've all been saying that we don't think that a 3-loss team is going to get in.
I just go back to this, man. Number one, this would be a really underwhelming bracket in my mind. It would. We just mentioned these matchups wouldn't really get me going. As soon as I saw Georgia, Tennessee on the bracket, I was like, oh.
I was annoyed.
We just watched this game. Like, I was there. We just watched it. Listen, man, I get it from the win-loss perspective that it all fits really neat and nicely. And it's like, let's make sure all these teams – I'm not saying records totally don't matter, but at the same time, I think they want to trick us into thinking that, 10-1 or 11-1 from this conference is equal to 10-2 from this conference or 9-3, or like they want to trick us that the conferences are the same. Forgive me for taking it to this school of thinking because this is football. But I go to baseball. If you're a 500 team in the SEC in conference play, you're probably winning another conference. Like, that's how difficult the conference is. So again, we trick, and it's the thing with the G5. We want to play this fairy tale game and trick ourselves into thinking it's all equal. Everybody's getting a shot. Bro, the G5 will never, ever, 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 as long as we're alive, win this bracket. They will never win it. They won't even come close to winning it. They probably won't even make a title game. Like, App State and Alabama should not play for the same trophy. I'm sorry, Boise State's a great story. They shouldn't be in a bracket like this. This is dumb. This is dumb, man. I mean, and this is an age-old argument, and I love the G5. Again, I got an App State helmet sitting right here, but realistically, you're not going to win a ring. Like, why are we even putting them in? Where should the 3-loss SEC team go? They should take Boise State's spot. Like, what are we joking? We're joking with this, acting like it's equal across the board. It's not equal. It makes you feel good because you bunch up all the 1 losses and the 2 losses and the 3 losses, but it's not that simple. It's just not that simple. And I'm not necessarily even coming with the fix, because the fix would be almost doing a power rankings. And it's like, well, who do I actually think is better? And I get why you can't do that. I guess this is where the computers would help, though, because they would factor in strength of schedule, because it's not all equal, man. It's just not. We got to stop pretending it is. So Sure, we'll feel a lot better if they're all 11-1, but they're not all the same, are they? They're not all the same, man.
But they never have been. That's the point.
Give Alabama. I understand that. I get that, but and I'm sounding so SEC biased, but which no apologies. But give Bama, Ole Miss, South Carolina, Boise State schedule. Like, come on, man. Like, I know Ashton Genty's a great player, and let's give him a pat on the rear end and say good season. Maybe even throw him a Heisman, but he shouldn't be in the playoff, man. Come on. Like, it's absurd.
I mean, at this point, are we really trusting voters with the fact that Dylan Sampson didn't get invited to the Doak Walker Award thing?
That's a whole separate issue. Who's voting on this shit?
I mean, let's just start there and work our way around.
We could really look at some of the people voting on the freaking AP poll is crazy. It's crazy work. Some of these people.
Yeah. How many people even vote for the AP? You know?
It's a pretty good list. It's like how many is it, Cole? I mean, it looks like they release it like it's a long list of people.
68, 72. I'm trying to think on top of my head. I mean, I know a lot of them.
I'm not saying that the requirement to cover a certain sport. I hate being like, I'm not that hardo guy. We're like, well, if you didn't play, you shouldn't be able to talk about it or break it down. Again, I'm not a chef, but I can tell you if the food tastes like shit, right? But man, there should be some sort of just, to your point, Dylan Sampson, Doak Walker. This isn't hard. Like, this is not hard if you've watched 5 seconds of football. It's not hard. And again, the bias, we're getting to a point where it's anti-SEC bias. We really are. It's like they want to make a point. Again, I don't need to see Georgia play Georgia Tech to determine the common opponent with Miami. Are they better? I just know they're better. I know they're better. They are. If that's SEC bias, then so be it, man. It's also biased to say Notre Dame's a really good football team and they lost to NIU.
Okay, now I got to defend Notre Dame because of honestly, at this point, they look better than
they whooped Army's ass.
Yeah, they whooped Army, and I'm not disagreeing. I'm not saying that Notre Dame should be inside the top.
Cole, you were the biggest Notre Dame hater like 3 weeks ago.
I was. I'm going to stand on it. Guess what? Tell me right now that Notre Dame, as much as they like, we're arguing about like Penn State having to call a 4th down fake punt to get out of Minneapolis with the win. Meanwhile, the opposing team in Notre Dame is beating the crap out of Army, yet still Penn State's right ahead of them. Like, I'm sorry. Like, that's all I'm trying to say.
I mean, you're not wrong. Penn State's getting I just feel like Penn State's there because it's like everybody sees it and it's like, oh, well, it's Penn State, duh.
Penn State's best asset is simply they lost by fewer points than Indiana to Ohio State. That's their best case. That's it. Common opponent. I mean, honestly, go back to common opponent. UCLA made it at least a 3.5 quarter game against Penn State. Indiana whooped their ass. Like, I mean, that's all I have to say. Like, my God. It's just one of those things where make it make sense. They're both 11-1. One lost to a better team. One beat the crap out of 2 other teams that they each played and both had struggles with. It's just like, it makes no sense at any single level. It doesn't. And again, same thing, head-to-heads. It matters some weeks, and then other weeks it doesn't.
Dave, I'm going to kick it to you because I feel like Cole and I have been on one here recently. I just, again, I go back to, you're in the SEC moving forward. You just keep your fingers crossed. You have an easy schedule. That's it. Because playing a hard schedule means nothing. It means nothing
to anybody. And so far in the 12-team, I mean, I'm going to wait till the final one to see what they really say. I mean, don't y'all think that's fair?
Yeah, I mean, listen, to your point, this could be all just a big show, and then the final one, like, whoop, here we go. Like, we were joking all along, or I don't know. I mean, to me, that sets a silly precedent and just a silly way to go about things. But welcome to college football, I guess, in college athletics, where it is silly a lot of the time. So, I mean, I don't know. Listen, there are a lot of hard questions here. It is a very imperfect system, right? I could be wrong. I don't think most of us want to go back to computers just determining this, right? I mean, do we want to go back to computers? Formulas?
Right now, I would. I mean,
to your point, at least there's Yeah,
There's consistency.
There's consistency.
there's consistency. There's consistency.
Look, if we're gonna talk about getting robotic umpires, why can't we go back to the system to where it's clear as day? You see it on a screen, you know who are the 12 best, and still you make it 12, you make it 16.
Ken Palm works in basketball. I mean, tell him, Dave. Ken Palm works.
Yeah, you just have to be very defined. But again, they reward like good losses and stuff. So I mean, I get the point. If you just had a data print, I think people would be fine with it. If you had like a spelled out criteria, which I think most people would be fine with the BCS formula. But I think when we get into a committee, you got to be accepting it's going to be subjective.
I genuinely think at this point, it's just about a criteria for everyone to follow and know what you're expecting. That's it. Just know what you have to do because of every single week it changes. And if that's going to be based off of eye test, that's fine. But off eye test right now, Alabama with a loss to Oklahoma should be ranked below Ole Miss and South Carolina. But they're not because they have a head-to-head win. So just make it make sense. Have something in writing, in form, saying this is what you have to do. Because common opponent wins and common opponent losses should also be a factor.
And I'll go back to the eye test thing too, Cole, and like head-to-head, I think, again, like Dave said, why play the games? It doesn't matter. But especially when you think about when South Carolina and Alabama played and think about right now, I saw somebody in the comments ask, Bama beat South Carolina. Would you really take them to – dude, if South Carolina and Alabama were playing Saturday, yeah, I'd probably take the Gamecocks to win, guys. Just off what the progression of those two teams, I'd probably take them to win, straight up. I mean, am I crazy for that? I mean, these teams change. That's what's so tough. These teams do evolve. Like they get better. Some of them regress, but they change. And I'm not saying it should be a formula of whoever's playing their best. We always say they remember November. I'm not saying if you have a hot November, you should get in. But at the same time, that head-to-head result, I mean, look at South Carolina LSU, for example. I mean, we're not sitting here arguing LSU's better than South Carolina because they beat them head-to-head, right? I mean,
no, we're arguing that Garrett Nussmeier, if he doesn't get hit by Kyle Kennard in a certain way, then that's actually a win for South Carolina.
Or if Lenora Sellers isn't hurt the entire second half. That's the one you really want to I know
we always forget too. And again, this isn't me hating on South Carolina. Tell you, don't blow a 17-point lead to put yourself in position.
Listen, again,
and none of us are arguing with you on that.
A game that I was there. That was my takeaway then. That be my takeaway now. You controlled that and you dropped the ball there. But I'm just saying, it's at some point, Dave, I think you've even mentioned this. At some point, it's just head-to-head kind of starts to lose its luster when one team starts going one direction and the other team starts going another direction. Kentucky beat Ole Miss head-to-head. Kentucky ain't better than Ole Miss, right?
No.
So Kentucky, it's not a perfect system. It's a good system. It's not perfect all the time.
Common opponent losses. Kentucky got boat raced by South Carolina in their backyard. South Carolina lost to Ole Miss in its backyard. Ole Miss lost to Kentucky in its backyard. So it's at what point are we talking about
the circle of suck? It's the circle of suck.
Plain and simple. That's it.
Everybody beat everybody. So, Dave, you got anything? Again, I feel like Dave's just get me to the last one.
No, I'm done. I'm watching the end of this last 30 seconds.
Oh, we do got it. What we got the Bama Houston? We got to get Dave out of here so he can get on the basketball grind.
South Carolina, Houston will hit a game winner, I guarantee it.
How much time left?
28 seconds.
Woo. Jeez. All right, cool. All right, we're going to get out of here. We'll go ahead and close it out. This was a lot of fun. We could go all night talking about this, but to Dave's point, we've got next week, essentially this time. We'll go a little bit earlier because the show's at 7.
Before we end, can I just ask whoever's in the comments section, I would like to ask you out of curiosity just to hit subscribe real fast. Because if you do, and you let us know right now, I will give you a shout out before we leave. Because you will become our 18,000 subscriber. We are one away. We are one away from
18,000. Nation.
So somebody, as we talk proudly of this team and of all your teams and how much effort we put into these shows, if somebody's not subscribed, and by the way, if you're not subscribed, please just make sure you hit subscribe because we do this live every single week. More importantly, we love the fact that we get to have a big audience that comes in here. We have over 1,200 people watching right now. That's going to continue to grow over time. But as long as you just hit subscribe, I will give you a shout out. And please let us know in the comment section. We are at 1806. Yeah. So we had just people pass us. I believe Clayton Young was one of them. So
that's
Clayton
your next
Young,
head coach, South Carolina.
Clayton Young, we will shout out. And Money Control AIs, I think this is Teabag. I was wondering where Teabag Gumps was. Thank you. Repeat Tour, a.k.a. Michael. Want to give you a shout out as well. Just subscribe. Thank you for getting us to 18,009. I appreciate you guys.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. Appreciate y'all, man. This is awesome. Listen, the grind has been incredible. This season has been awesome.
Thank you as well.
We've still got more football, so I'll try not to get too sentimental right here. But again, going into the final weekend of the regular season, time flies and you're having fun. We can't say thank y'all enough. It's been absolutely incredible. We've enjoyed every single step of the way. And
Cowboys fan 1992. Thank you.
Cowboys fan. We got them coming in, man. Again,
Brandon Howard, thank you.
Yeah. Thank y'all so much. It's been awesome. And again, we'll be right back here next week. Make sure you stay tuned. We've got content bleeding out of the eyeballs till then, but right back here next week, breaking down these rankings again, and then that final Sunday, we might go like 4 hours that day. I don't know.
It's going to be a wild.
That'll be a wild one. That's going to be a wild one. Guys, in the meantime, again, appreciate each and every single one of you tuning in. Again, make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like. Make sure you stay tuned. Our guy Dave Shumate's about to freaking rock and roll and go live tonight after some Feast Week action. So the content's not over yet. We've got Houston and Alabama. We've got Auburn and North Carolina. We're covering all the sports. And again, stay tuned right here for all your rivalry week coverage. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn on notifications. Check us out via podcast wherever you get your podcast. You can also find us across all social media platforms, as well as our website, secunfiltered.com. And you can find Dave Shumate at Mach 10 Sports, Cole Thompson at Mr. Cole Thompson, me at CPhilly19, and all of us at SEC Unfiltered. So again, guys, appreciate you all tuning in. Thank you so much. We'll see you next week when we try to make more of this madness, makes more sense of this madness. And again, great night. We'll see you all on the other side.